music, friends. Greg Koch here with Doug Sewell from Paul Reed Smith Amplification Devices. And we were just talking to Doug about his early years when he had his own company,
right.
Legendary Sewell Amplificators.
Legendary.
And you hooked up with Paul, you said, at the Dallas Guitar Show. Why don't you give us a little rundown of what kind of took place from there on in?
Well, ending up with the last segment, I was kind of placed in a booth next to Paul one year. They kind of had matchmaker things going on with, you know, Paul, you need to try out this guy's amps. I didn't know much of what was going on. And, but I heard word that Paul might want to come check some amps out. And I knew Paul liked gain, which is something that a lot of the Texas boys, you know,
right.
Super Reverb's king,
right.
You know, clean Marshalls.
Right.
But I heard there was this thing called gain that Paul really dug. So 2 nights before the show, I decided to play around with a little gain on one of my amps. And I added an extra gain stage to a Texaplex.
Mm-hmm.
There was a whole half of a tube that wasn't being used because I only had 1 input instead of 4. And so 2 halves of the 2, I just left 1 not used. So I actually cobbled together an extra gain stage. Of course, the amp went crazy, squealing. And I worked all night long getting it under control with baling wire and
chewing gum.
Sweat, chewing gum, whatever I could to get it under control. And I cobbled this thing together and just kept my fingers crossed. So when Paul came over during the show, I kind of steered him toward that amp. And my little devious scheme kind of worked out because it was the perfect amp for what he had going on. I mean, feedback, that sustainy, he's very lyrical, kind of a player, and it's just kind of lucked out that it just had just the right amount of whatever Paul, you know, liked. So he writes me a check, you know, for his whatever he could get there. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And kept coming over, you know, kept abandoning his booth and coming over and talking. And finally, after playing it a while, he said, let's work on that high end a little bit. Of course, every time Paul would come over, you know, kind of crowds would kind of come in. And so we popped the chassis right there on the spot. And people would kind of look in, and I said, okay, here's what I can do. And pretty soon, I think my friends at Mojo Tone ran over and started getting parts for me. This guy next to me had a soldering iron. We kind of all started working on this amp together, and Paul was saying, a little more. You know, he's really playing the back and forth with me, you know, and it culminated with, that's it, don't touch it. And the crowd went crazy, started clapping, you know, and there's, by the time, you know, it just had made kind of a big spectacle. This was before we even kind of knew each other, really introduced each other, really. So the fact that we worked so well together, just right there on the spot, I think was something that he kind of made note of. And he was kind of saying, well, maybe you should do this, you know. I was taking the suggestions, and a lot of my buddies that were kind of Sewell amp people were kind of, man, you know what you're doing, don't you know? And I said, hold on, you know, this might work out someday, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, Paul had a magic marker, and he was changing the color on the logo on the Sewell amp, you know. This looks better, you know, and I was holding them all back, you know, and that's cool, you know. And so it ended up starting out to be a real good relationship. He had some great gigs that Dallas show, and it made me really proud. I was nervous because I'd cobbled this amp together. I didn't know when it would start squealing or oscillating, you know, right there on the spot. But it held together great. I was able to work the details out later, you know, after the show and all that, and get it all. So Paul and I, we kind of caught the bug together a little bit, and Paul has a good handle on amp mods and amp designs and circuitry. So we would literally get on the phone and, you know, we would talk and mod amps together on the phone. Same amp, I'd have a Texaplex, he'd have a Texaplex, we'd work on them together. he would say things like, "What is this purple wire?" And I'm like, "Where? Which one?" That kind of a thing. And I'd just have sweat dripping off my nose because I wasn't that, I wasn't that friendly with him. And it was this big, big figure in the industry. And I was pretty intimidated initially, but, I was just like, okay, which one, Paul? But it worked out to be kind of very cool. And so one thing led to another. And after a couple of years of this kind of thing, Paul called me and said, he said, and he was had a different tone in his voice, kind of like a hat in hand tone, nearly like he was apologetic for asking me this, but he had just come out of a board meeting and he was asked to ask me if I would consider heading up the amp department with PRS. And I kind of, the days when in college when I was doing my thesis in architecture and sleeping under my drafting table, and all of the struggles with the architectural firm that I had poured into for the last 12 years or whatever it was at the time, flashed before my eyes, and it was like I was immediately confounded by the question.
Indeed.
Like, changing careers at age 48 or 49 or whatever it was at the time. It's kind of a strange thing to be asking, but the way he posed it was very interesting. And he actually made me an offer, and really, this is something that I can't uproot my family, and that we're so settled in. I had a couple of kids and things in school, and it was just kind of really, I just can't consider this. And he did give up, and over the next year or so, we back and forth a bit, and one thing led to another, and I finally accepted the offer, and with the help and support of my wife, who, bless her heart, this is putting her whole faith in her husband's decision here. I mean, it's really a big thing. And so
how long ago was that?
That was 3 years ago, coming up this June. And I spent several months commuting, every so often. I would do a lot of work back in Texas, and I was still transitioning. I still, way after I actually formally, started my PRS career, I still had buildings under construction, that I was finishing up. And so there's a lot of loose ends. So I transitioned from Texas and came out a lot. And then this summer, 3 years ago, we started looking, and we finally moved in the spring to get the kids in school. One was starting middle school and one was starting high school.
Aha.
So it worked out great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so now we'll basically go into all the different models you have lurking as we speak, but that gives us a little information about the whole thing, how it all started. Right. Now we'll get into some of the amps individually and talk about them in our next subsequent sessions, listener. So Greg Koch here with Doug Sewell at Wildwood. We'll see you cats in a minute.